All right, well, hello everyone. I appreciate you joining us today for another session here in our Turfgrass virtual field day. My name is Mike Richardson. I'm a professor in the horticulture department here at the University of Arkansas. And in this particular session, we're going to be looking at some work we've been doing with an organization called the Turfgrass Water Conservation Alliance, or the TWCA. You can see their banner here behind me. And we've been working with this group for about 10 years now. And really the mission of this group is to do science-based testing of different grasses, different turf grasses that we use not only here in Arkansas but across the world, and do those types of tests across multiple locations, multiple years, and very strict protocols for trying to assess the drought tolerance of these grasses. And the reason that this is an important venture is because if you go out to a retail outlet such as Walmart or Lowe's or something and look at grass seed, just about every bag will have on the label that it's drought tolerant. And certainly we know that not all grasses are going to be drought tolerant, or there's a range of drought tolerance in these grasses. And so what really the TWCA started with to try to accomplish was to be able to actually put a seal of approval or a certification on a bag that would qualify it as being truly a tested and proven drought tolerant grass. And so the TWCA basically is as I said earlier, it's a nonprofit group. It consists of multiple large seed companies and breeding groups that are developing grasses. It also involves researchers like myself and other researchers around the country. And it even involves groups such as water authorities in cities that have water restrictions, and they're members of the TWCA and support this type of effort. So these trials, again, they go on at multiple locations. They go on for multiple years. Each time we test something, the trial you're going to be seeing today is a Kentucky Bluegrass trial. This trial would be running at about 6 or 7 different locations around the country, at least 2 years of data collection. And then that data gets basically compiled, and a research committee will then review that data and decide which of the grasses are actually at the top of that trial from a drought performance, and then those grasses become qualified to be TWCA certified. So once they're qualified, then they can put the TWCA label on the bag of seed. And again, the ultimate goal is that gives the consumer an assurance that the grass they're buying really is something that can get by with less water. So my research associate, John McCalla, who's been with me for about 20 years, is going to really discuss this trial today. John has been heavily involved in the development of these protocols and the methods that we use to test these grasses. And he runs the trials that we do here in Fayetteville. And so he's going to basically be discussing a little bit more about the methodology of how these things are done, and then also showing you some of the grasses that have been under severe drought stress for a period of weeks now. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson, for the introduction. As he says, my name is John McCalla. I've been a technician here at the University of Arkansas for about 20 years. Did my master's work here as well. And the trial I'm going to talk to you guys about is a continuation of what he was speaking of, is a TWCA trial. This particular trial I'm discussing is the 2018 Kentucky Bluegrass trial. It was seeded in the fall of 2018. There are 59 varieties. Some of them are standards, and some of them are commercially available, and some of them are experimental varieties. When this trial was planted, there was no structure over it. This structure was built on an adjacent piece of land and then moved into place once the plots were mature. The structure is a 32 feet wide by 96 feet long high tunnel. The interesting thing about this high tunnel is that it's on skids, so you can move it back and forth. So when we're done with this particular trial, we'll be able to move it down the road to the next trial, which we will have a 2019 tall fescue trial starting drought in a couple years. So let's talk about this trial a little bit. We have conducted drought on this particular trial twice last year and one time this year. Drought this year was initiated on the 2nd of June. So it's been about 6 weeks since these plots have had any water. And when I say we initiated drought, we brought the soil to field capacity, we completely saturated it, and then we just shut the water off. And not a drop of water has been on these plots in 6 weeks, and you can see behind me how they're doing. Some of them are doing okay, some of them not so much. So let's go around and talk about how they look. With all experiments, you have checks, and in a variety trial, we have standards. A standard is a known variety. We know how it's going to respond to the conditions. And in this particular trial, we have drought susceptible standards and drought tolerant standards. So Geronimo, this plot here, is a drought susceptible standard. So we expect it to not look great, lose green cover, and be in this particular state after 6 weeks. Back here behind me, we have mallard, and mallard is a drought tolerant standard. It's a known variety. It does well under drought conditions. And you can see it looks a lot better than the Geronimo. Back here is snap. Snap is another drought susceptible variety. As you can see, when you compare it to the border, which is tall fescue, different species of grass, no water here for 6 weeks, no water here for 6 weeks. So this is obviously a susceptible variety of Kentucky bluegrass. Now there's some other varieties that aren't standards that are doing great. If you look right over here next to this mallard plot, there is this variety named Mazama, and it looks great, comparable to our standard mallard as far as green cover goes. Maybe, in my opinion, maybe even a little bit better. As you can see, some of these plots are signed and some of them are not. There's a reason for that. The plots that are signed are commercially available. That means you can order them online, or you can go to your nursery and purchase this seed. The ones that aren't marked are experimental varieties. They're still in the process of initial screening. So, and if you can look here, we talked about the Mazama performing so well and the mallard performing so well, and those are available varieties. But if you look here, these are experimental varieties performing just as well as those two. And while they aren't available now, once they go through the complete screening process, they may become available if they meet the TWCA guidelines for being a TWCA Kentucky Bluegrass. And you can also see this one right here. This variety is also an experimental. It's not performing as well as any of these around it. So if I was guessing, I would say this one's probably not going to get the TWCA certification. So how do we analyze this? How do we decide what's holding its cover and what's not holding its cover? Well, here at the University of Arkansas, we take a lot of pictures. And we take those pictures using a light box. We have to have a way to compare these things scientifically. So what we do is, instead of just going out and taking a picture of them, because we'll take 3 pictures 3 times a week during the course of the dry down and also during the course of the recovery once we re-irrigate these plots. We have to have something that's consistent. And so what we've been using for years now is a light box. And what this light box offers is a way to replicate a light source, so we can take the pictures any time of day and get the same light. This is our standard light box. It's run with a battery pack, camera, and inside we have 4 fluorescent bulbs that provide our light source. The discovery of these battery packs makes this an entirely portable setup, makes it faster and more efficient for us to get all these pictures taken, because there's occasional days where we're not just taking these drought pictures, but we're taking cool season variety pictures or pictures on the green, and you want to be able to move quickly and easily, and the addition of the dolly to the light box makes that also easier. So something we discovered after the battery pack was the shutter release. Initially, we'd have to bend down and actually hit the button. But now we have this remote control, as we call it, and it keeps you upright, a little easier on the back, and a little more efficient with our time as well. You can just hit it and go. And that's how we collect the data on these particular trials when we're looking for green cover. So something unique to these structures for us is we attach an irrigation system to them. So what we have is these MP rotator nozzles attached to this 1.5 inch PVC line, and it runs down both sides, and we feed the irrigation on the supply side by going across the top of one of the trusses here. So what's unique about this is with these mobile high tunnels is our irrigation system moves with the high tunnel. So as long as we have water, whether it be a quick coupler, a hose spigot, an irrigation head that we can tie into, we can run water anywhere, and it's the perfect setup for this particular high tunnel. That's basically how we run a TWCA trial here at the University of Arkansas. We're about to turn the water back on this one, but if you're interested in looking for TWCA approved grasses, whether it be Kentucky Bluegrass, tall fescue, Bermuda grass, perennial ryegrass, fine fescue, there are lists of TWCA approved grasses at www.tgwca.org. And thank you for attending.